Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. The coolest thing about tabletop games is that you get to play a character that can do amazing things that are well beyond human capabilities. However, even when you're an all-powerful character, depending on what you have chosen to specialize in, there is still going to be some kind of trade-off. A barbarian may be able to wrestle with a dragon due to their superhuman strength, but they likely won't be able to cast powerful spells like a wizard. Unless, of course, you're going for a muscle wizard, but even then, the downside is that you aren't the smartest spellcaster because you constantly skip class for the gym. A player that insists that they should be able to do everything with ease is someone who has forgotten why adventurers form parties. When the situation is dire, everyone in the party should have that one thing that they're really good at, and a few more things that they'd rather have someone else in the party handle. It really isn't a sign of weakness that a fellow party member is better than you in a niche situation. If anything, it should reassure you that teaming up was the right decision. If one person is so much better than the rest of the party, to the point that letting others try to help would only slow them down, why is this person in a party with a bunch of losers?
Want to try some gamer sups? You can now get free samples anywhere in the world and try the most delicious 0-calorie energy powder in the game when you use code LootGoblin. Each sample sent out gets me one step closer to my quest to get a flavor that tastes suspiciously like Dr. Pepper. If you end up liking those free samples and want to purchase some gamer sups, make sure to use the link in the description or use my code to get 10% off your entire order.
Today's treasure was submitted at lootgoblinstories@gmail.com and goes by the name Dungeon Master Player Character Hijacks Player Backstory and Heightmog's Party. To give some context, a good friend of mine, let's call him Sam, was playing with me in this campaign, and we thought it'd be fun for our characters to have something of a shared backstory. What we came up with was that Sam's character was a prodigy discovered and under the tutelage of my character. My character had rescued Sam's and saw his natural talent, whereas Sam's character was eager to learn under his new sensei, who he had a very high view of. My character was old, respected, and presented himself as sagely. But this was a front to hide the reality of his incompetence and inexperience, which is why he would be a low-level player character. Our idea was that just maybe my character could improve himself to be the mentor Sam's character thought he already was. That honestly does sound like a really fun dynamic. Let's read a little bit more. We ran the idea by the Dungeon Master in session 0, and he was apprehensive of an older character starting at level 1, which is perfectly fair. I hate the whole my character's backstory is that he was a highly accomplished general in World War fantasy, but he's level 3 by the way thing. But when I explained that my character was a poser, he seemed fine with that and approved it. With the approval, I didn't think there would be any problems regarding my backstory, but I soon learned that was not the case. I'm not sure how much of this was a response to our backstory, or how much of this had been planned, but when session 1 started, the DM said that he wanted to start by playing out our backstory where my character rescues Sam. I wasn't thrilled about this, but didn't want to object. He said that Sam was one of several captives, and among these was his DMPC. DM explained that DMPC was the only character among the captives that was stronger and a better fighter than Sam's character, and noted, well decided, that Sam's character was very impressed by DMPC, and that DMPC had been Sam's character's mentor. Again, I wasn't exactly happy about this. My character, with DMPC's help of course, freed Sam's character, and were joined by the other player characters in the chaos. I guess the Dungeon Master decided that they'd be there for whatever reason, and that was the start of the campaign. Yeah, honestly at that point, it's not really a backstory. You just ended up writing the first session for them, I guess. So congrats on being a co-DM. You definitely have a co-party member in the DMPC. Sam and I found it difficult to roleplay the dynamic we had planned, since what we'd established in our backstory was supplanted by all the other player characters being added, and the DMPC being introduced as the real mentor, who decides to randomly stick around to chaperone us. In retrospect, maybe there was a way I could have been more adaptive and played into it, but I didn't like that. It seemed like my character was competing with the DMPC for Sam's character's respect. Between that and some other unexpected tonal issues, I told the the DM a few sessions in that I felt like my character wasn't a good fit for what the campaign ended up being, and asked if I could prepare another one, if we could agree on a good exit for my current character. The DM agreed and I made my next character. In the following session, my first character sacrificed himself to save Sam's character and the rest of the party, finding some redemption in his otherwise failed life. My next character at least was able to establish a good dynamic with Sam's and some of the other player characters, but we ran into our second problem with the DMPC then. The DM had hinted that the campaign would have a heavy focus on vehicles and vehicular combat, but I think all of us had neglected that when creating our first characters. With my new character, I gave him the appropriate skills so he'd be useful in that aspect of the game, but not to worry when it came up. DM let us know for the first time that DMPC was also a better driver than my new player character, and should have us covered if mine ever failed. If any player character had a good stat or skill, you could safely wager that the DMPC's was higher. Additionally, he was higher level than the player characters. He also felt the need to dwarf the party in things that weren't stat related. It was kind of a meme in our group that Sam liked his character to be the tall one in the party, and he usually played taller fantasy races, which he was doing in this game. Another player, let's call him Rob, was also playing a taller race, and the two were comparing their character sheets to see who was actually taller. So obviously, our DM chimed in to let the party know that the DMPC was actually a whole 2 feet taller than the tallest of the party. I think this would have put the DMPC at 9 or 10 feet tall. Granted, the DMPC was also a very tall fantasy race, but it was crazy he couldn't even let the player characters have that. Yeah man, that's just petty. It certainly could have been worse. The DMPC didn't boss us around or try to PvP us or anything, but we did have instances where when we were separated, the party would find itself in a jam, but thankfully the DMPC would be there to bust through the wall. One time he literally did it, in the nick of time to rescue us. Probably the most egregious example is a time we were doing a stealth mission. The DMPC wasn't with us, but the DM had my character's guild send another NPC to help us. We quickly discovered the guy was a lunatic and a liability, but the DM had all our efforts to send him off or otherwise mitigate the situation fail. When we got to the enemy camp, all the player characters there made successful stealth rolls, but the DM had the NPC loudly announce where we were and why we were there for no reason. Enemies swarmed us and we might have been overwhelmed, but fortunately our faithful friend DMPC also happened to be at the camp to save the day. I should also note that the DMPC didn't have an obnoxious personality or put down the player characters with their words. Conversely, he was actually nauseatingly selfless and helpful. Man, this guy is such a nice guy. How could you not like him? I played my new character as being suspicious of him for that reason. Like he's too nice, he has to be hiding something kind of deal, and that he always seems to be there at just the right time, which honestly does sound like a fun way to play it. The DM sort of made my character seem crazy with this. Some players thought it was funny, but I eventually stopped because I realized it was coming from a place of passive aggression and that the bit was getting old. I actually sort of felt bad and had my character try to make amends with the DMPC. The DMPC had told me out of game that he was getting ready to temporarily retire the DMPC and that he was preparing a quest to see him off for the time being. I hadn't talked to the other player characters about the DMPC, but wondered if the DM knew DMPC had worn out his welcome with them. When we had his send-off, I roleplayed my character as being helpful because he'd felt guilty at how he treated DMPC earlier. But this ended up playing out in a way that neither DM nor I saw coming. Here I'll introduce another player. We'll call him George. George is the politest guy I've met, so he hadn't said anything about DMPC in or out of game, but I suspected that he was getting sick of it around that time. During the quest, my player character ended up saving the DMPC's life by taking a heavy blow. My character was thought dead. The DM privately messaged me that he wasn't, and this caused Sam and George's characters to turn on the DMPC. They said DMPC had manipulated my character and proved his previous suspicions about him. Sam's character demanded that DMPC leave the group, and George's character rigged DMPC's vehicle to explode. This isn't a horror horror story. So the DM didn't pull a DMPC reads your mind, teleports behind you, then slashes you with this katana. You know, like a nothing personnel kid type stuff. He actually took it well and thought it was an interesting development. He did have the DMPC survive the explosion. Oh, come on, man. But said it would take him a long time to recover from his injuries, and he may eventually return as a villain. He said that he hadn't planned things turning out like that, but that he thought it was cool how it ended up playing. I'm happy to say that we were rid of the DMPC, and there was no hard feelings. You know, as annoying as that character is, the ending like almost makes up for it. I do agree with the author here, it could have been a lot worse. The DM still has a soft spot, obviously he let the guy live. It would have been so much better if he just died there in a blaze of glory, and when the author's character came to, he was genuinely confused. It's so funny that like the entire party was thinking that there was something going on, to the point that it kind of just eventually happened anyways when the author here gave up on that idea. One thing I really love about the tabletop hobby is sometimes a few random dice rolls can completely change the narrative. This was a much funnier send-off than whatever the quest was going to be. This is actually a great example of how a DMPC can be annoying even when the DM really isn't that bad of a guy. I feel like he just was kind of piggybacking on all the cool things that the author came up with because he had like a fear of missing out and wanted to do those things. I want to talk more about the author and the DM in the future, but first I want to cover the second much shorter story that goes by the name The NPC Flex Train. There was also multiple occurrences where very high level OC do not steal type NPCs would show up to accost our low level party. Luckily, the worst instance of this was the first one. This very high level badass hot chick showed up and started boasting about how she and this other NPC, who wasn't present and who our player characters had no idea about, were so much stronger than our level 1 characters. Yeah, I hope so. She demanded our characters perform feats of strength that were meant to be impossible to succeed, just so she could then easily do them and make fun of us. As the dice would have it, the player character with strength as a dump stat actually rolled a nat 20 on one of these. We as the players thought that was awesome, but the DM ruled, you just sort of are able to do it barely, and he sounded reluctant to even grant that. I know that nat 20s aren't necessarily supposed to be reality breaking, and I don't think that any of us were expecting the character to metamorph into a Giga Chat or something, but I think he should have given him more than that at least. Anyway, the NPC then asked him about something plot related that he was privy to, and once he told her, she just pissed off. The following NPCs weren't as obnoxious, but it was a general pattern of high level NPCs showing up for no reason, the DM talking about how cool they and the other NPCs were, the NPCs then talking in character about how cool they are, and then trying to tussle with our, again, low-level party. A lot of, "Sup rookies, think you can last a few rounds with the big dog? Don't worry, I'll pull some punches. Huh, not too bad, kid. Maybe someday you'll be my level," type things, and I think at one point Sam's character was the only party member willing to indulge these NPCs and their bizarre compulsion to impress our dinky band of adventurers. The campaign was pretty fun otherwise, and I'm glad there wasn't any drama or friendship destroying stuff like you read about online. These NPCs and their antics are kind of funny to me in retrospect, but at the time I was certainly frustrated with that aspect of the game. Again, thank you for reading. Thank you for submitting this story. It's much more lighthearted. I know plenty of people that are guilty of like this NPC flex train. The thing about a DM is you get to make a lot of cool characters, and sometimes you want to showcase them really early, but if the story never gets there and you kind of overplay how cool these characters are, it can come off as pretty cringy, so I definitely get that. I will say one of the hardest things to do in a homebrew setting is establishing like your pantheons and your prominent NPCs, because yeah, it is kind of weird if a random deity is spending a lot of time harassing like a level 1 party. Honestly though, having your level 20 character or your deity show up to basically arm wrestle like a wizard at level 1 is so absurd that it kind of gets hilarious again. I feel like I would totally play it goofy here as a player, but also I'd be a little bit afraid that I get smited. It's just hard to take it seriously seriously, you know? What I really like about this story is everyone seems like a good sport. The DM rolled with a couple punches. The players kind of went along with the silliness. Everyone seemed to remember that it's a game first and foremost. And thank you again for submitting this story. I feel like every DM from time to time has like these NPCs that flex on the party. I'd love to hear about yours in the comments below. Make sure to like and hype the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And as always, I hope to see you in the next video. Farewell for now.